This is pre-calculus concept 33C. We're going to look at solving trig equations. This time a little different scenario where the equation given appears to be in a quadratic form. So initially this is going to look quite a bit harder, but it's just a different strategy. My goal is to figure out what angle or angles on the interval from 0 to 2 pi satisfy the equation 2 cosine squared x plus cosine x minus 1 equals 0. So one thing to notice right off the bat is this resembles a quadratic equation that you might have seen back in Algebra 1. And what some people like to do is actually replace the cosine function with some letter like w or u, and I'm just going to use w in this example, just to more clearly see that, oh yeah, that's actually something that is a lot like a quadratic that I've been solving for years. So what we've actually done is replace w with cosine, right? And then just simplified things so that I can see the quadratic nature a little bit more clearly. You can always use the quadratic formula, but most quadratic equations are going to be factorable. And with a little bit of work and a little bit of algebra practice, you should come up with what this would be in factored form. 2w minus 1 and w plus 1 end up being the factors that would make this work. And just like you would solve the quadratic, you would set the first term equal to 0 and the second term equal to 0, and then simply solve for w in each expression. So here I get w equals a half, and here I get w equals to negative 1. So I've solved for w, but I have to remember that w is actually something else. And so here's where the trig comes in. You're going to replace w back and realize that that is actually a kind of a simple trig function like we started with in the first video of today. Or the cosine of x equals negative 1. And each of these individually is a little mini problem. So I'm going to draw my little circle. Think about the places where the cosine is a half. So that should be a first and fourth quadrant answer. One of them is pi over 3. The other one is 5 pi over 3. I don't have to look beyond that because of the constraint at the beginning of the problem. And so that is going to be 2 solutions to my original equation. And then I have one more because there's another place on the circle where the cosine is negative 1. And that's going to be pi. Okay. So again, using a lot of our unit circle knowledge to solve these equations. This one then ends up having 3 answers. Be sure to ask me in class about a good way to check these using your calculator, because there is a fast and easy way to check the answers, and also especially check how many answers you should be getting. All right, let's do another example. Here's another trig equation that appears to be in quadratic form. I'm going to make a substitution again. This time I'm going to let w be sine x, and I'm just going to rewrite this as 4w squared minus 1 equals 0. Hopefully we won't have too much trouble with this. If not, go find a 9th grader in Algebra 1. They can help you out. Just kidding. But I should be able to solve this for w. You could factor here, but since there's only one w, we can actually just jump in and move the 1 to the other side, divide both sides by 4, and take the square root of both sides. Be very careful about your plus or minus. And then the square root of 1/4 turns out to be 1/2. And I'm done solving for w, but I have to remember that I still need to solve for x. So it's really the sine of x is plus or minus a half. And thinking about my unit circle values and the places where the sine is positive 1/2, that would be here and here. And there's also places where the sine would be negative 1/2. So you can kind of visualize, think about the 4 answers, and then write them out. So I have pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, and 11 pi over 6. And once again, I do not need to go around the circle twice because the constraint for this problem was only 1 trip around the circle. Alright, let's have you do a U-try. This is very similar to example number 1. Take a minute, see if you can give all the answers from 0 to 2 pi that would be solutions to the given trigonometric equation. Alright, hopefully you were able to factor this one into quadratic form, figure out the solutions, and then remember that you're actually solving for sine of x. So we end up with sine of x equals a half, which has 2 answers, sine of x equals 1, which has 1 answer, and 3 final answers.